Hello there. Today for my tasting I'm taking a look at a Cabernet Sauvignon from Ningxia in China. This is Chateau Mihope's 1968 Family Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon from 2020. So 1968 is the brand, 2020 is the vintage there. And I have to say, clearly this is aiming at being a very prestigious wine. This is an incredibly heavy bottle. So here we're in, I believe, the Yunchuan sub-region of Ningxia. Ningxia is in the middle to the north of China. These vineyards are growing on the floodplain of the Yellow River, sheltered by the eastern portion of the Helan Mountains on this occasion. Chateau Mihope is, I think, a great example of some of the investment that is going on in this part of China at the moment in producing high quality wines. The estate was founded in 2011. The estate covers 1,500 acres and is owned by the Midea Group, who are a family-owned group. The family made their fortune producing domestic appliances. The site is 1,100 metres above sea level, which is pretty normal for this central part of China, and the soils here are a friable gravel soil. So having established the venture in 2011, the family took on some highly respected both foreign and local consultants to help them establish their world-class winery. So for instance, the Australian Richard Smart, arguably one of the world's leading viticulturists, was taken on as an advisor for planting here. And in 2012 they did a lot of work to improve the soils, presumably putting in subsurface drainage, putting in moisture probes, establishing the irrigation system maybe. Planting started in 2013 and in fact the planting material was bought directly from France on a charter flight. The winery building has been designed as a classical European chateau. Work on that started in 2015 and that was completed in 2016. As well as being a state-of-the-art winery, it was also decided that this was going to be an art winery, so the entire facility is full of local artwork with the intention of appealing to tourists. To make the wine, again, they employed a leading consultant. So the chief winemaker here is somebody called Marc Dworkin. Marc used to work for somebody called Count Stephan von Neipperg. Stephan von Neipperg owns, amongst other things, Château Canon-la-Gaffelière in Saint-Emilion. I've tasted wines from Marc Dworkin from the Bessa Valley winery in Bulgaria, where Count Stephan also has an interest. He's somebody with a track record of making high quality wines in a modern, attractive style. And the winery has produced some very impressive wines and achieved some good results at international competitions. This wine, for instance, has won silver medals. This vintage of this wine has won silver medals at both the Decanter World Wine Awards and at the International Wine and Spirit Competition. I was a judge at a competition in Guangzhou in China recently, the Golden Bottle Awards. This was awarded a trophy. And I thank at this stage the organisers of the Golden Bottle Awards for providing us with this wine to taste. I don't know a lot about the wine, the way the wine is produced. Certainly the grapes will have been hand-picked. Pretty much all the fruit in Ningxia is. There's very little mechanisation. I would assume there's a high degree of selection going on. And I would also assume that the wine is aged for a prolonged period, at least a year, probably longer, in French oak barrels, and a pretty high proportion, at least 50% of those, will be new. So let's see what we make of the wine, shall we? I mean, this wine is completely opaque. It has a black-red core, it has a purple rim, it loses very little colour to its rim. The wine is clinging to the side of the glass, but it's not producing particularly heavy tears. I suppose, yes, it's just starting to. I mean, it's noted on the label as having 15% alcohol, so that's more what I'd expect, and I'm expecting it's fairly tannic as well, so it should be quite viscous. Let's see what we make of the aroma, shall we? Those aromas have a relatively restrained but rich, dark plum, dark black cherry notes to them. But I think what's making them a little restrained is in the foreground there's a much more savoury, cedary note, perhaps with notes of graphite. Yeah, there's a more drying, savoury, earthy note beginning there. Graphite in the centre, and perhaps there are lifted notes of cedar in the middle of those aromas. Let's taste and see what we make of it. The palate is initially rich, ripe, concentrated and opulent. There's lots of juicy black fruit, and the juiciness of the fruit is showing that the acidity is pretty good here. The black fruit is a sort of a generous black plum, black cherry note. But then there are very clear oak notes overlaying that. There's quite a strong cedary note, there's quite an edge to it. There's a smoothness as well to the texture there that's quite sort of almost like sort of cocoa powder. There's a chocolatey note to the flavour, a more dark chocolate note. There's a really rich core, almost getting to a sort of a, but not quite to a bitter licorice note, because it's not quite reaching that bitter note because of the vibrancy of that ripe fruit. The 15% alcohol is adding roundness to the back palate. There are plentiful tannins here. I've talked about the cedariness. There's a sort of a slight cinnamon note of sweet spice, and there's a slightly drying, cedary element to those fine tannins. But in general, they're actually quite supple. It's not astringent, mouth-puckering, because the juiciness of that ripe fruit and the richness of the fruit at 15% alcohol, I suppose possibly also the presence of a little glycerol giving a bit of brownness to the back palate, is all making this very open and attractive even as a young wine, which has quite a lot of structure to it. I mean, this is a full-bodied wine, and yet at the same time the acidity there is giving it some elegance at the front. There is a lifted, perhaps black curranty note. It's really not quite as precise as cassis sort of note, which I'd put as a more high-toned black currant. But there is that sort of quite black pastel note. There's plenty of dark fruit in here. It may not be classic cool climate Cabernet Sauvignon, but it certainly has a richness, a warmth and an opulence that's very impressive. The alcohol would make this seem like a blockbuster wine, but it has more complexity and more elegance than that description would give it credit for. The oak is producing a really nice structure. The flavours are lasting, they're developing well in the mouth. I think this is a wine that really should be drunk in 5 or 6 years to really see it at its best, and could be kept for longer than that. I think if you enjoy rich, ripe wines in the style of something like a Napa Cabernet or a rich Shiraz from Australia, I think this is a wine that you could very readily enjoy. I hope you found this tasting interesting. If you've enjoyed watching, do please hit the like button, that would be great. Do share it with your friends, that would be fantastic. We'd love to hear your comments, hear what you think about this wine, other wines you've tried, Chinese wines, or the tastings that we're doing in general. It would be great if you could sign up and follow us on YouTube, but most importantly, I hope you manage to make some time and join us for another video tasting in the very near future. Goodbye for now.